It's your time for Chai with Nanice. Get ready for substance, clarity, change, and especially empowerment. Get ready to turn over stones, uncover stories, and get to the heart of the matter in every area of your life. Any mood runs, any emotion flies, and your dreams are within your grasp. There are no limits or boundaries, and your comfort zone is out of reach, yet it's the safest place you will ever be. Come in, sit down, and have some chai with Nanice.
Happy holidays, everyone, and welcome to Chai with Nanice. And I'm Nanice, and I'm really, really excited about tonight's show. And when I tell you what the topic is, it's going to seem pretty odd that I am excited because it's depression. And now how can anybody be excited about depression? Well, I am, because I've been there. I have been chronically depressed for a good part of my life, I'd say from my childhood well into my 30s, and I'm 45 now, and I am so far from depression, and I know the way, and I want to share all sorts of ideas with you tonight about what depression is and what depression can bring you and the gifts of it, and really the other side of it, the upside of depression, and that's where I want to go tonight. My guest is Natalie Walsh, and she is an amazing psychotherapist and just an extraordinary person that I get the opportunity to have in my life and to share with you here on the air. And she's going to be my co-host tonight in talking about depression. So she's going to take the disclosure part of the evening, and then we can begin and talk about whatever we want. So, Natalie, it's all yours.
Nanice.
Hi.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I always love to be here with you. And I just want to say that, as always, with any type of mental issues going on, if this is a problem, if you're having feelings where you feel like life is not worth living, where you're thinking about suicide, things are going on in your life that seem way out of the realm of what you feel like you can handle, that's always a good time to contact a therapist, a psychiatrist, if you're in that kind of a place at the moment. The emergency room is a good place to go, your nearest mental health center. I just want to make sure that people do understand that there are differences in depression. And if you're in that long phase where your symptoms are very serious, then it's important for you to seek out the appropriate treatment. And we've all heard so much about the different antidepressants, the different bipolar medications, all kinds of stuff. I mean, pharmacology has its place, no question. And for a lot of people, these chemical issues are not really able to be resolved, in my opinion, in other ways. If you have this type of a problem, then it's great to get medical attention for that. What we're talking about here tonight is something outside of that, is something that if that doesn't work for you, if you're not someone that finds medication to be the path you want to go or hasn't helped you, this is really the place for you here and now.
Right. If you want to explore other options and maybe look at depression from a different angle, and also that this is not a diagnosis either. We're not here to diagnose what depression is and what it's not.
Sure.
What we're here to do is simply explore depression and what it might mean, and maybe a light at the end of the tunnel. And so, having said that, thank you so much. That was a beautiful, beautiful disclosure there. And now we can move on and have a little fun. Thanks so much, Natalie.
Yeah, have fun with depression. There you go. You don't hear that too often at your psychiatrist's office.
No, you really don't. In fact, I have never ever seen a psychiatrist or heard a psychiatrist say, "Let's have some fun with depression." Well, when I think of depression, I often think of not being who I really am. So when I look back at myself when I was, in my teens and 20s and even my early 30s, now I can look back and say that I was depressed because I was suppressing my true identity. I was suppressing my true self, that the things that I wanted to do, the things I wanted to say, the things I wanted to experience, I had shut down so much that I didn't even know what they were anymore. Yeah. And now, I work with a lot of people around the world even, and I don't work with people who, are on medications or, have been diagnosed as chronically depressed, but I have worked with a lot of people who have called me up and say, I'm just depressed. I don't feel good about my life. My life is going nowhere. And where I start with them is simply looking at the places that they're not being their real and true selves. Yeah. And once we start looking at that, and once they start making changes and moving in that direction, then it's really funny how the depression starts to go away. And I'm going to say something that some people are going to get mad at me for saying, but I believe depression, in the way that we're talking about it now, is an absolute illusion, that it's a mask. And it's a mask that shuts down who we really are. So first, what happens is we stop listening to our inner voices. We stop listening to our desires. We stop listening to our visions and our creative spirit. And the more we don't listen to those things, the more this energy that we call depression moves in and suppresses it even more, so that we don't even hear it. And so it becomes this mask. And this is why Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that makes perfect sense, because the term itself, depression, you are depressing who you really are, suppressing it, not allowing it to flourish. And I think it's interesting that you talk about, teenage years, early 20 years. If we look at this time, this is such a time of exploration, such a time of trying to figure out who we really are. And there's tremendous pressure, both internally and externally with peers, to behave a certain way, to have certain ideologies, certain values, behave in ways that are appropriate considering your peer group. And it really does become, I think, a challenge, and one that we're not very well equipped most of the time to deal with, and that's allowing our true self to flourish, because we just want to be accepted so much in that time of our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, I totally agree. And very often, as a teenager, and even as we get older, we trade being ourselves for the illusion of being accepted or loved by someone else.
Yeah. Approved of. I love that.
Yeah. And it's interesting, because as we change our behavior in order to get someone else's acceptance, no matter what age we are, what we're doing is rejecting ourselves. And once we reject ourselves, even if we get the illusion of someone else's acceptance, we don't really feel their acceptance. We still feel rejected, because that's exactly what we're doing to ourselves.
And in some ways, I think particularly so for a female brain versus a male brain, because female brains tend to be more relationship-oriented, that when we do get that approval, when we feel like we have that connection, we do get a bit of a dopamine rush from that. And so it does feel good in the short term to please other people, to be accepted by others. And yet in the long term, we end up sacrificing the very thing that gives us purpose in life, meaning in life, that gives us our own unique expression of ourselves throughout our life.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because that's what life is really about. I believe that we are a channel for divine spirit to move through us, to live through us, and that's individual and unique. And when we shut that down, what we're doing is we're shutting down our connection to a higher source. And it doesn't matter what you call that source, whether you call it God, the universe, higher consciousness, it doesn't really matter. Once that source is shut down, then our ability to live our lives to the fullest extent, that's shut down too. Yeah.
And that really does describe the epitome of what depression is. It's that feeling of disconnected. It's that feeling that you're isolated, you're out there on your own, and you feel powerless and hopeless to reconnect again.
Yes.
That it's almost like you've been forgotten in some very primal way.
Yes.
And what an awful, isolating feeling that is to have. And I would venture to guess very few people have not had that experience, have not felt, even if it was for a short time, that feeling of depression, that feeling of lonely, isolated hopelessness.
Yes.
Of being disconnected from that life, from that source.
Yeah. And I think that that's a huge sign that we're depressing something inside of ourselves when that happens. It's like do you ever see a happy person walk into a restaurant or a store or, wherever? You turn and you look at them and you're like, what does that person have? What's their secret? And I'll tell you what their secret is. Their secret is that they are listening to their inner guidance. They are listening to their inner voice, and they're expressing themselves in their unique and divine ways. And that might not look like the rest of society. In fact, I'm pretty much going to place all my money on the fact that it doesn't. And that becomes the hard part, because in order to really live your life the way that it's meant to be lived, and I hate using meant to be, but I'm just going to throw that in there for lack of a better way to say it. But in order to live your life for the way that it's meant to be lived, you have to let go of all the ideas, all the dogmas and the doctrines and the beliefs of right and wrong, good and bad, and sin and saint and all of that. Because when we live our lives by those ideas, by good and bad and sin and saint and all that, what we do is we put our lives in a box, and we restrict our lives by the values and beliefs by society and by others, our family, our religions, whatever that might be. And whenever we do that, that keeps us from listening to a greater voice inside of ourselves. It keeps us from listening to that divine guidance. It keeps us from really discovering and expressing our greatest, most extraordinary selves in this lifetime.
Yeah. And I think it's an interesting process that you go through. Because on one hand, some of that great fear, some of that that hesitancy to give up old patterns is a lack of knowing which new patterns to grab onto. That place right in the middle, that transitionary period where you don't quite fit in your old life, but you don't quite yet know this new life that you want. You sense that there's something there. Other people seem to have something, that person you described, that light person. And yet you don't quite know how to get that. And I think it's really fascinating because at different points in our life, we're all on this spectrum. We're all either rigidly holding on to these beliefs that we're terrified to let go of, or that we are completely unknowing that we're rigidly holding on because we're right.
Right. We're sure we're right, of course.
Yes. And I've been there.
Yes, so have I.
We're in that strange place of I don't know who I am.
Yeah.
And I would sense that in our culture now there's a tremendous amount of people that are kind of floating in this transitory void, that they say, I know there's more, I just don't know what it is. People tell me, seek my passion, follow my dreams, do what my heart tells me, and I don't have any dreams. I don't really know what I want. I don't know who I am, and I don't know how to find out. And that's both an exciting and terrifying place at the same time. It's terrifying because what if I don't have any dreams? What if there's no really where for me to go? What if I'm just one of the boring masses of people that have nothing special about me, nothing interesting in my life? And that's where that paralyzing fear and hopelessness begins to eat away at the excitement and desire that maybe there's something for me out there. Maybe there's a place where I shine, where that light and passion comes through me, and I get to live effortlessly in life.
Yes.
Because when we are living that beautiful sense of who we are, that truest form of who we are, life becomes effortless. Everything we do resonates so well with that we just pick up momentum as we go, and it becomes this wonderful, exciting, and effortless place to be.
It's like a dance.
It is, which is the opposite of depression. You feel depression and you're dragging your feet along and you can't get out of bed, or all you want to do is artificially stimulate that life, either through food or drugs or alcohol or sex or shopping or gambling or anything you can think of.
Not that there's anything wrong with food and sex, but,
When you're doing it, I think, because you don't have anything else, when you're trying to jumpstart your life, when you're trying to jumpstart that
when you're using it, when you're using it for artificial stimulus, exactly. Yes. Yeah, and, on the other side of that, when you're living your fullest life, the same things that you use to suppress yourself, food, sex, whatever, they take on a whole different energy and they become part of your expression. Like, remember when we went to Italy, and which was, last April, and we watched the Italians eat. Oh, my goodness. That was, I mean, I sometimes felt like I was watching a private moment between a man and his food.
Yes.
Yes. That's not a depressed man.
And love. And,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. But I
It's a
agree with
beautiful
absolutely
experience.
everything you're saying. There's that place in the middle where you're neither here nor there. You know what you've been doing isn't working, and there's something inside of you that's screaming at you and saying there has to be more, there has to be more, and yet you don't know how to move towards that more. And I think one of the challenges is that many people who find themselves in that situation isolate themselves. So there could be 10 other people on their very block feeling the same way, but each of those 9 other people are also, quietly repressing, depressing, suppressing what's inside them. And so you end up feeling like you're alone and there's no way to move out of it. And
go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, oftentimes we tend to look at depression in exactly those ways. We think of the person that's alone for the holidays, that is, isolated, without friends, without community, without that sense of source. And yet, at the same time, so many more people look on the outside like they're happy. They're with their friends. They're with their families. They seem to be doing wonderfully. And yet those can be some of the most lonely, the most frightened, the most desperate people. And it's interesting when we look at the suicide rates over various holidays, Christmas being a huge one.
Yes.
For oftentimes what happens is people have such a wonderful experience. They're with their families. There's this glowing sense of love and connection. Everyone is feeling good, and there's just this gratefulness for and love for the people in our lives. And yet for someone who is looking in this void, who is looking in this place, who has this hopelessness, they look at January and they say, I cannot go there. I don't want to be in that loneliness. I don't want to go back to my life that is cold and empty and void of that passion, void of those feelings. And so that's really, for those people, why they end their lives after the holidays, because they want to end on a note. They want to end in that, this is a weird word, but bosom of that love, of that wonderness of their families and generosity and humanity, oftentimes at its best. And that's where they want to leave. That's the emotion that they want to have, because they know it's only going to, or they believe that it's only going to get worse after that. And they don't want to go there.
This is one of the few times I'm going to disagree with you.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And,
I'm ready.
And that doesn't happen very often. So, as you know, I was a suicide outreach counselor back in New York for about 7 years. And and yes, the holidays, Christmas, New Year's, this time of year is absolutely one of the highest suicide seasons. That and August, when all the therapists go on vacation. And that's true, too. And what I saw working on the hotline was that there was such a contrast. People looked around and believed that everybody else was feeling what they were supposed to be feeling, the warmth and connection and joy and happiness. And because of the contrast, it very often makes people feel even worse. So it's like you can go through the rest of the year feeling like, all right, you don't really think about your life if you're, and you just go on day in and day out, and you go to work and you do this, and maybe you go out with your friends, and there's not a lot of emphasis on how you're feeling in contrast to how other people are feeling. And then the holidays come along, and you notice that other people seem to be feeling joyful and happy, and people are connecting, and you see lovers in the mall, and you see children all, happy on Santa's lap and all that. And it makes you look inside and realize that, oh, wait, I don't feel that way. And I think that contrast throws people further into depression, and they don't know how to get out. And, there's a few pieces here that I want to address. And one is that all those people that you see being happy at the mall, and you see being happy, at the restaurants you go to and all that, I would say from my experience that most of those people are not as happy as they seem. But like you, they've learned to put a really good mask on it. And in fact, I think that most people go around with some degree of depression and unhappiness. And I hate to say that, but I really believe that's the truth. And I'm saying that's the truth because of working with people for years, and also because I was one of those people. And I'll tell you that no one would have ever imagined that I was chronically depressed for decades. I hid it so well. And I also know what's on the other side. And And one of the things that I want to say is that if you are feeling that way, if you feel that, oh, I'm the only one going through this, everybody else looks so happy and they've got their lives together, it's not true. Other people are, believe it or not, looking at you and thinking the same thing. Isn't that ridiculous? Yes.
Right.
And so there are people around you. And maybe, one of those 10 people, on the block, so to speak, can make a move and maybe start connecting, because that's really one of the places that it begins, the connection, having the courage to connect with yourself and with other people. And, then change starts to happen. It is, I'm not going to lie and say it's easy to move out of depression, that it's easy to move out of sadness. It's not. But it's worth it. Whatever it takes. Oh my God, Natalie, I know that it's worth it. And it really means taking a chance. It really means starting to look at all of the areas of your life that are not working and making one small change at a time. I think the other reason that this is such a depressing time of year is because, New Year's is coming and a new start and a new life. And hell, when you're depressed,
yeah,
what can you do? The idea of looking at a new life and starting over, it's overwhelming. It's depressing.
Yes, it is.
All right? Yeah.
Especially if there are things that you've been New Year's resolutioning for years, that I'm going to finally do this, I'm going to finally do that. You really are setting yourself up. I think what's interesting about all of these different scenarios that we've talked about is the underlying idea that we tell ourselves stories.
Yes.
We are creating stories about what we think the other person is feeling, about what we think we're feeling, about what we think we deserve, what we think we can and can't do, what other people deserve, why do other people get this. And I think that that's a good place to begin to take a look at, especially when we look at it from the idea of, am I living my true life? Am I living my true self? Am I who I want to be? And it's hard to decide that if we're really busy telling ourselves stories about who we think we are and what we think we should have.
Right, because it's all a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
it's all a story. And it's all a story. And there's either stories that make you feel good and stories that make you feel bad. And if you're living inside the box that someone else has created for you, whether that's society or religion or your husband or a parent or whoever, then you are not living your life. And I can clearly say that 100% down the line. And it means unraveling the old stories and saying, is that really true for me?
Yeah.
Do I want that to be true for me? And, the interesting thing about beliefs is that all beliefs are false. None of them are true. If there was a belief that was true, everybody would believe it. And so if we come from this, and I know that's something to really think about and meditate on, but if we look at all beliefs as being false, then we can start picking the beliefs that work for us. And that's really what it's about, picking beliefs that support the kind of life that we want to create for ourselves.
And again, being in that void place, that transition from my old beliefs to my new beliefs. I mean, I hear this wave of consciousness out there going, well, if I'm giving up all this other stuff, how do I know what beliefs are going to work? How do I know what beliefs to take? If none of them are right and none of them are wrong, then I'm confused. How do I know what to pick?
Yeah, and you don't.
What do you tell people like that?
Yeah, you don't know what to pick. One suggestion that I would say is definitely find a support system, whether that's a group that you create yourself in your house, whether that's a coach, whether it's and anybody who's gone down that road and who's created a life for themselves that supports who they really are. Connect with that person because they know the way. Yeah. If you connect with people who are lost too, and you're both kind of lost, you're going to stay that way. So find someone somewhere that's gone the route and can guide you somewhat. And it means trying things on. It's like sometimes you go shopping and you try different pants on, you try different jeans on, and it takes a while to find the ones that really fit. And that's really what it is about beliefs and stories and truth and creating your life based on who you really are. It's a discovery process. And the funny thing about that is that I truly believe that that's the purpose of life, to simply discover who we really are. That's it. Because if you can discover who you really are, what comes out of that automatically is your purpose.
Yes. And what a beautiful thing depression is, to tell you when it's time to start doing some more of that work. That's exactly the purpose of it, is going, oh, wait a second, we're veering off here. This does not feel good. I need to begin to explore. I need to challenge some of this stuff. I need to really look at, who am I? Yes. In fact, I love that idea of getting together with a group. It's like the new book club, you know? It can be a Who Am I club.
Yes. Who Am I club?
We get together and we say, okay, I'm exploring who am I now?
Yeah. I think we need to start that. Yes.
Don't you think that's I think that people across the country should absolutely do this. Yes. And each week there's a theme. Who am I in relation to my physical body?
Yes.
Who am I in
relation? Yes. Who am I in relation to my relationships? Who am I in relation to my house? Who am I in relation to myself? Yes. Yes.
And all of those wonderful, creative, interesting ideas of which you're right. No two people are going to have the same belief about it. No two people are going to know the same way to go. So as we get together in groups, then we say, you know, this really worked for me. And, I've struggled with this. Oh, me too. I've really struggled with this. And someone else goes, you know, I never struggled with that. I always struggled with this, but I never struggled with that. So we're all on the path, and some of us are doing really great in some areas and not so much in others. And that's the beauty of being together, is we get to share all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the direction we're moving in. The energies are changing on this planet. You and I have talked about this, especially in the last few months, the last year. And the energies are pushing us, pulling us, doing something with us towards uncovering who we really are. And I think that's why we're seeing more people make changes in their life, and more people who are feeling the power of depression as well, the ones that are resisting the change. But I love your idea, and I'm going to put that out there. If anybody's interested in starting Who Am I group club, please email me at Nanice at Nanice.com. That's Nanice at Nanice.com. It doesn't even have to be in your neighborhood. We could do a teleconference. We can do a lot of things with that. But creating that kind of support to start discovering, uncovering, expressing your real self is amazing, and I totally invite that and would love to be a part of it.
Yeah, I would as well. And I think we because we live in this great time with the Internet, that we can be 10 different people from 10 different countries and all be experiencing the same thing at the same time, which is just phenomenal to me. I mean, when we look at this seeking of who am I, you look at the explosion of like YouTube and those, you know, the idea of 15 minutes of fame. That's people desperately trying to define themselves, to look at themselves in a way that others look at them. Because we don't have it. You know, I grew up, and I have like 5 pictures of me from when I was a kid. And I look at my children now, and oh my gosh, I've got a room stacked from floor to ceiling of videotapes and DVDs of that, and they see themselves so intimately. They know every look they have, the different sounds of their voices they've grown. And I thought, I've never known myself like that.
Right.
I've never been that intimate with myself.
Yes. Well, you give your children the most amazing opportunity and space to discover and uncover who they really are. Yeah. And they're allowed to make mistakes, whatever that is, I don't know, and they're allowed to try this and allowed to try that and then the other thing, and no matter what they do, you just love and accept them. And that, you know, I give that to my children as well, but so many of us, you, me, and, you know, billions of other people never grew up with that.
Right.
And the reason, and not to judge anybody, I think our parents just, you know, they had really strong ideas of what was right and wrong to protect us, and they were trying their best. Right?
Absolutely. And frankly, it's so darn much easier now. You have digital cameras. You have the Internet. There's so many tools that were not available, you know, to other generations to know themselves in that way, to say, oh, I didn't realize I came across so harshly, or, you know, I never knew that I looked that way, and I always thought I was so fat, but look, I really don't look that bad. You know what I mean? There's just ways that we've never had to see ourselves before.
Yes, we're living in an amazing time now. I feel so blessed to live now. I really do. You know, we were talking before about, you know, how do you start uncovering who you really are? And I would love to address that a little bit more. And one of the things that occurs to me is that even in the most down and depressed person, there is a little spark. And part of the process, I believe, is getting in touch with what that spark is. And that spark is usually about directing us to something that we always wanted to do, but we were always afraid to, or some reason we never thought we could. And by getting in touch with that little spark, that little thing, and it could be taking dance lessons, it could be, moving to another part of the country, it could be, ending a relationship, or it could be, painting, it could be anything. Start there. Start anywhere. Because once the star, go ahead.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you. I apologize.
No, I keep, this is just how we talk. That's all.
You say something, and I'm like, oh, yeah, and then there's this, and I just go on.
And I do the same thing.
Too, for a lot of the clients that I see, those are such frightening, huge options. They're like, I can't even get off the couch, let alone go to a dance lesson, let alone sign up for those kinds of things. And I always think about this wonderful study that was done. It was a university back east, and they did this where they began to realize that it didn't matter whether you actually did it or whether you did it in your imagination, whether you just thought about doing it. The changes in the brain took place the same. And it's amazing how the more you think about something, the more real estate your brain devotes to that idea. So if you're constantly thinking about how sad you are, how depressed you are, how you can't do anything, your brain is saying, okay, well, that's what we're doing, and so we're going to give all of our resources to doing that.
And it sorts for that. It sorts for reasons to keep feeling that way. And what I mean by sorts is it looks for reasons.
Absolutely.
And they're there if you look for them. Yes.
We'll always find them. That's that self-fulfilling prophecy. We talk about the secret. This is old stuff. This is manifestation at its core form. I'm going to create by seeing in my environment exactly what I want, exactly what my internal representation is. And so when I look at that, I think even if you're at a place where you're like, I couldn't even get off the couch. I couldn't even take dance lessons. Yeah, moving, but that's years away. I cannot even shovel my walk today. Begin to think about it. You don't have to move. You don't have to do anything. I always love the fantasy of if I won $1 million, and I start thinking about it, and in the most depressive times I'll be like, you know what, I'm too tired to spend the money. Even in my mind, I'm too tired to spend the money. And then I think, all right, if I had to spend the money, what would I do? Well, first, and of course, this is 10 years, 15 years ago, having the $1 million. Now it's like 10 million. Now it's like $1 billion. I have to have big money. But begin to think of, well, okay, I'd probably just give it away. Well, who would I give it to? And then I would give it to this charity, or I'd give it to these people, and what would they do with it? And it's amazing that even just those first little thoughts begin to spark more.
Yes.
Then a little bit more energy goes to it, and a little bit more energy goes to it, and it begins to grow on itself. So even if you just start small with thinking about what it would feel like to move my body, what it would feel like to do yoga or do dance or go to a concert or have that love in my life. If I'm someone that is lonely and doesn't have a partner, and what would that partner be like? What would that partner look like? What would they smell like? What would it feel like if I were laying, on the couch snuggling, watching a movie with them, or whatever it is? Begin to just take those tiniest little steps, and your brain will respond. And the more you think about it, the more energy you'll have to think about it. The more energy you have to think about it, the more your brain goes, oh, okay, this is what we're doing now. And it will begin to create resources for you in ways you can't even imagine. And that's the beauty of it, is you don't actually have to get off the couch just yet.
I love that. And that makes so much sense, because what we know, through NLP and hypnosis and all that good stuff is that the mind that does not know the difference between real and imagined.
No, it doesn't. The body responds the same.
Exactly.
They hook all the little kids up to these lovely electrodes that sense the fine muscle movements and the perspiration and the respiratory rate and the brain activity when they're watching TV shows, when they're watching another kid on a roller coaster, and their body is going through the same things as it would if they were actually on that roller coaster. So you're right. Your brain cannot tell the difference. If you can think it, you can turn it into a physical action down the road.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I envision somebody, when they're sitting on their couch and they're feeling kind of down, and they think, okay, if I won $1 billion, what would I do? If I had $1 billion in my bank account right now and money was no barrier, no limitation, and I didn't worry about what anybody else thought or said, I didn't care about anybody else's opinion, what would I do?
Yeah.
And so you start there, and then you start thinking, enriching that fantasy. So maybe it's like, what, I would take off and I would go on a cruise, and I would go to Peru, or I would, take basketball lessons, or I would learn to play the violin. And you don't have to do it, because if you think you're going to have to do it, then your mind won't even go there. You don't have to do it. You're kind of tricking yourself, between you and me. Yeah. And that's okay.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing, a little self-manipulation, And once you start fantasizing, I said manipulation, not something else. And once you start fantasizing about that, that thing that you would do if there were no barriers and no limitations and you didn't have to worry about what anybody else thought, then what you're doing is you're creating a new chemistry in your brain. And if you do it long enough, what I'm hearing you say, Natalie, is that sooner or later you're going to want to start doing it. And that might mean just picking up the phone call and finding out, how to go about it, or, going and sitting in on a class, or talking to people about it, or something, or joining a chat room online that deals with that particular. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And before you know it, you look back and you're like, wow, how did I get here? And then once you have that experience of going from, a depression in your life to actually creating something profound and wonderful in your life.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, then you can take that experience and you can duplicate it in any area of your life. Then you have the experience to recreate it anywhere you want.
So let's take that model and apply it to the concept that you talked about earlier, which is, in most, I would venture to say, forms of depression, what's happening is we are not living the life we want to live. We are not being authentic to ourselves.
Yes.
And so if we take this place and we look at all the problems that people are having right now, and we have financial problems, and we have fear, and we have, I just don't know how I'm going to manage. My kid has ADD, and my spouse is out of work, or my partner just decided to go live a different life without me. All these different kinds of things. So going from that place to, okay, clearly something needs to shift in my life.
Yes.
Something needs to change within me. How do I do that? I hear what you're saying. It sounds good. I kind of get this feeling that, maybe I'm not living the life I need to live, or want to live, or could live. I just don't know how to find it. I don't know what I want.
Yes.
How do you go there?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing, if somebody came to me with that, the first thing that I would say is that where you are is absolutely perfect. Yeah. And that's where you start. Because a lot of times people think, okay, there's something wrong with where I am. And the rejection of themselves and where they are actually impedes their ability to change and move forward. And so, so I create an absolute acceptance. It's absolutely perfect where you are. And based on your prior history and your beliefs and everything that's happened up till now, where you are is absolutely perfect. And then I start to give them permission to explore the possibilities. And what is possible.
Yeah. And
when you talk with somebody long enough and you give them enough space to really be themselves, after a little while what begins to happen is dreams start to emerge, ideas start to come to the surface, things that maybe they even haven't thought about in decades start to slip through their lips. And when that happens, then possibility happens. I was talking to someone just the other day, and she was going through a very depressing time, and there were health issues, and financial issues and all that. And and the more she talked about it, the more depressed she appeared to become.
Yeah,
and I
which
just
now
listened.
We see why.
Yes, of course. And I just
from
listened.
The brain model. Yeah.
Of course, yeah. And if I was in any other place, I probably would have gone there with her, but I know a little bit better now. And so I just listened to her, and and I empathized, because if you try to put somebody's idea of their life down, their story down, then they have to defend it even more, so they get even more depressed. So if you are working with something, more attached to it, because they have to prove that they're right, that there's a good reason to be depressed, that there's something wrong. And so I always take a position of complete acceptance and complete perfection. And I did within this particular example with this particular woman. And then I said, and if we can just for one moment clear the whole slate, and I know it's there and we can take it back afterwards, or you can take it back afterwards, but just for a moment, if we can just kind of clear the slate and you could do anything you wanted without any limitations, what would that be? What would that look like? And, and she got quiet, because for that moment, I took away all the limitations. I took away her story just for that moment. And she knew she could take it back, because she knew I heard her. And she looked at me and she thought, well, if I could do anything I want, there is this project that I have really wanted to work on. And I know that if I did this particular project, that my life and all the pain that I've had in my life would be put to purpose. And I said, wow, that's amazing. And then I asked her, and what would be the first step in doing that? And before I know it, she was spewing out one idea after another. I could barely keep up with her. And within a course of about 20 minutes, she was so excited about embarking on this buried vision, this buried idea, that she could barely keep from running out the door and into her car to make the phone calls she needed to make and just start moving in that direction. Yeah. And so, a lot of it is just creating the space for that to happen, because it's there. And the funny thing is, not only that I've discovered over the years, that it's in all of us, that we all have this something inside of us, and it wants to come to the surface. It's like, holding something floatable under the surface. Have you ever held like a life jacket under the water? Right. It wants to come to the surface, and you really have to fight to keep it down. And when you're depressed,
how tiring is that?
It's so depressing. That's what I was going to say.
That down. It's exhausting.
It is much more work to hold it down and to hold yourself down than just to let it rise to the surface. And so again, now,
I just again, there's depression. You start
there's
feeling
depression.
That I don't know how much longer I can hold this down. I don't know how much I can't do this my whole life.
And you're right.
Yes. And it doesn't occur to us to let it go.
It does not occur to us.
And see what happens.
Because it's scary, because all we know is to hold it down. And you're absolutely right. It's absolutely exhausting. It is much more tiring to hold yourself down than just to let whatever's inside you rise to the surface. And the truth is, if you do release the hold even just a little bit, something will begin to rise to the surface. And that something may be just enough energy, maybe just enough spark to let other things start rising to the surface. And before you know it, you're beginning to live the life that you always imagined possible in the deepest recesses of your mind. And that's a life worth living.
What happens to us? Why is it that, is it an ingrained thing? Is it instinct? Is it training, environment, that somewhere we get the belief that we have to hide this life vested, that we have to not let anybody see it, that we have to hold it down like it's a bad thing?
Yeah.
Where did we get that idea from?
Well, it does seem like a bad thing, because many of us are brought up to believe that if we let this thing, this spark, this life inside us rise to the surface and run our lives, then we're going to be rejected, we're going to be different, we're going to have all sorts of problems because no one else will understand us. And I'll tell you.
Worse, we'll be arrogant.
Yes.
Don't say that. You're bragging.
Yes.
This is arrogance that you think you're so much better than everybody else. We have these weird, sometimes, messages that come Because for people who have been trained to hold it underwater, someone that's letting theirs bob around and going, look at this, is great. I don't have to work so hard. I just get to, and everybody's like, oh, I don't, that's bad. You know, this is, you're just bragging about, I don't know. There's something to that.
Absolutely. Because we're afraid to be better than anybody else. We're afraid to shine. Yeah. We're afraid to shine because if we shine, then what does that mean? Because everybody else is so busy hiding themselves under darkness and dust that no one's shining. But I'll tell you what happens. When you allow yourself to shine, when you give yourself permission to shine, what that does to the people in your life or even the people that see you in the stores or the malls, what that does is it gives them permission to begin to shine because then they have a model of what that looks like. And yes, it will scare some people. And that's okay too.
Yes, that's the ultimate story, is that if I shine, that makes me better than you. Yes. And that's that's not true at all. And we buy it. Yes. We buy it on both sides. If you shine, you're better than me.
Yes.
So I have to really do my. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's because we forget who we really are. We forget that we are all these brilliant, shining pieces of this great, omnipotent divine. We forget that, and because we have forgotten that, we make ourselves small so we don't seem like we're better than everybody else. Because God forbid we act like we're better than everybody else, and we're really not. They find out that we're really flawed. Oh my goodness! Then what might happen? Yes. But the truth, because there are beliefs and then there's the truth. The truth is we are all a spark of the divine. We are all a spark of some great, omnipotent divine. And now is the time to start uncovering that and let that energy work inside of us and let it bring to the surface whatever there is that wants to be expressed through our individual form. And that is the gift that we give to ourselves and we give to everyone else. Everyone else.
Absolutely. And this goes back to that very beautiful idea of altruism. You know, that oftentimes there's a misunderstanding of what that means. That means I have to sacrifice myself in order for the good of the whole. When the exact opposite is true, that as I become my best self, that is truly the good of the whole. And I love the example of the robin. You know, the robin's job is to eat the worms. And if a robin decides one day, oh, no, that's really bad, I shouldn't do that because, you know, it's wormy, it's a family, and I'm eating him, and now what's going to happen to the children? And, I feel awful, and so I'm going to not eat the worms. And then
what if another robin wants the worm? Yeah.
Yeah. So then all the other people are going to feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be eating the worms either because, well, apparently that's bad, and I didn't know we weren't supposed to be doing that. And, you know, he's such a great person. There's such a great robin because he's not eating the worms. And next thing you know, you have this overpopulation of worms, and it floods, and they're all in the surface, and then they're getting squished and stepped on, and it's ugly, and it's horrible. When, in fact, if the robin had done what was the robin's nature to do, what was the highest purpose of that robin, to keep the worm population in check, then the whole ecosystem survives in the most beneficial way. And that's exactly who we are. As we shine, as we fulfill who we are to the very best of our ability and share that with others and lift others as well, then the whole human ecosystem raises to the next level.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That we work together like a beautiful puzzle. And when we suppress ourselves, then we're suppressing the intricacies of that working mechanism.
Yeah.
I had never heard that robin metaphor before. I absolutely love it. And it's absolutely true.
I like the puzzle, too, because if you figure, you know, a green piece is better than a blue piece. Oh, look, you have two outie parts, and I only have one outie part. You must be better. So I'm going to try and be like you, but I can't be like you because I'm part of the blue piece, and I have to fulfill my destiny as the blue piece to make this incredible picture beautiful.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because we all have a special purpose, and that purpose is being who we really are. That's the purpose, because when you fulfill the purpose of being who you really are and expressing your divinity in the world, what happens is you give these gifts that are enormous to each other, and other people give their enormous gifts to you, and suddenly the entire vibration of your particular group and then the planet starts to raise, and that's when even more magic begins to happen.
Oh, my goodness, we cannot even begin to imagine the life the life force that we could as humans create if we kind of got on board with that idea of, I'm a blue piece. How wonderful is that? Oh, you're a green piece. You're such a great green piece. How exciting. Oh, look at the red piece. Oh, wow, that's so great.
Yes.
If we all could embrace our particular uniqueness and express it to the fullest, instead of fighting each other over who's better, and I should be a bigger piece because I'm more important because I'm blue, you know?
Right.
If we could do that, where would we go? Where would we go as a species?
I think we're going to find out.
That is going to be, I hope it's in my lifetime. I hope I get to see that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah. We are living in such an extraordinary time of great change. And, you know, with great change, there's chaos, there's crisis.
Yes.
And that's actually a good thing. What is the Japanese sign for crisis? It's danger and opportunity.
And there you go. That's depression. Danger and opportunity. It's an alert that something is not going right and an opportunity to change it for the better.
Oh, I love the way you put that, Natalie. That's beautiful. That is beautiful.
We're a great mind together. See,
we are a great mind together.
Together we make a wonderful turquoise.
We do make a wonderful turquoise. And when we combine with others, too, the beautiful rainbows that we make as well.
Yeah,
and so we only have about a minute left. And so what do you want to offer to our listeners as a closing thought?
Find that joy within. I love the saying that says, everybody loves something. This is a Dalai Lama. Everybody loves something, even if it's only tortilla chips. Find what you love. Spark to that passion. When you find that feeling, put your thoughts in that direction. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I want to end with this idea, and that is, people who love and express themselves simply are not depressed. They are those happy people who go through life smiling. Nothing is wrong with them. They are healthy ones because they have the courage to express who they really are. They have made the choice to live their lives from the inside out and not care a bit about what other people think. And they know that in the end, what they think and what they feel about themselves and their lives is all that matters. They are the people who die with a smile on their face and feel the deepest of gratitude for having lived the best possible life they could have imagined. And they did. You have the very same choices right now. Deep inside you is a voice. Maybe it's a quiet voice, but a voice nonetheless that is whispering divine directions to you. It is your secret desires, your greatest fantasies, and your creative drive. It is all of that and so much more. It is the divine blueprint for your best possible life. And anything less is an unextraordinary use of your life. Your life is a unique gift awaiting your presence. Your life is a unique gift awaiting your presence. It's time to own your life and live it to the best of your extraordinary ability. Live it now. This is Nanice. You have been listening to Chai with Nanice.
Thank you for having Chai with Nanice. Please go to www.nanice.com for great free stuff that will empower you to live your best possible life. Free books, articles, shows, meditation audios, and so much more at Nanice.com. That's Nanice.com. Nanice's books are also available in all major bookstores and Amazon. Check out The Infinite Power of You, Even Gandhi Got Hungry and Buddha Got Mad, Zest Point, Lip Prints, and many others by Nanice Ellis. To find out about one-on-one coaching and how Nanice can personally coach you to experience your best life possible, please email mybestlife@nanice.com.